Hello everyone, all you early arrivers. So we'll kick off with the content in just a moment. So if you're settling into your desk, make sure you've got your cup of tea or your bowl of soup or your sandwich, probably a pad to take copious notes because we've got some really great speakers this afternoon, and we'll get started in just a minute or so. Hopefully everyone's heading over to the stage. While we're here, a little orientation for you. So you'll find on the right-hand side of your screen a panel, which is the chat panel. I'd encourage you to use that if you've got any questions for our speakers. There's a few places you can pop them. You can either pop them in the chat if the chat's not too busy, or there's a Q&A tab there which you'll find. You can also click on that and add your questions in there. And then polls, we're not going to be using any polls today, so don't feel like you need to have any opinions about anything, but equally, if you have opinions on things that we're chatting about, then I'd love to hear them. This really is an event which is intended to be a conversation with the community, so do share your thoughts. We'll focus on the stage chat. If you've got the option for event chat as well, that's kind of broader and outside of this immediate stage area, so just keep an eye on the stage chat if you can. I'll try and keep an eye on both anyway. But without further ado, with that little preamble in mind, let's get started. So my name's Briony and I am the Scale-Up Lead and CMO at Rocket Makers. And as part of that work, I work collaboratively with TechSpark to run something called the Investment Activator Programme. It was launched a couple of years ago and intended to really invigorate the investment community, both in terms of the investors and the founders themselves, so providing support and signposting to enable a greater flow of capital into the region of the Southwest. So today I'm bringing to you the third quarterly investment briefing of the year. I think it's our third year of these events. And this one is people-powered investment is the theme today. If you would like to tweet about the event, then I won't be because I'll be running it, but our hashtag is QI Briefing, and I'd appreciate you're welcome to share any of the content far and wide unless otherwise mentioned. So please do feel free to tweet today. And other than that, just to mention, we have a smorgasbord of supporters that have enabled us to do this work. So you can see them listed at the bottom of that slide there. And those guys have supported us over the last couple of years to run this Investment Activator Programme, which includes our pitch competition, Silicon Gorge, our informal pitch practice sessions called Pitch Me, also us managing and curating a significant data set in terms of investors, and also a whole bunch of content. So you might have come to this event because you've read my monthly updates on investment, which go out via TechSpark, usually around the kind of 10th of the month, reflecting on the previous month and all of the successes in terms of equity investment that we can report on. So today, as I say, our theme is people-powered investment, and I'll explain a little bit more about what I mean by that in a moment. But before I do that, just to let you know, the quarterly investment briefing was really created because we recognise that there's a really rich community of investors in the Southwest, but that a significant proportion of their investment, in fact 85%, was going into the golden triangle of Cambridge, Oxford and London. So we decided we wanted to try and put the spotlight on the Southwest a bit better, and help all of those investors and everyone else understand and appreciate and value the entrepreneurial ecosystem that is here, the amazing work of interesting businesses that are starting up and growing at speed. So the quarterly investment briefing exists to help investors and enablers of investment, by which I mean people working in the professional services and accelerators, incubators, that kind of thing, by helping the real goal is to help them to network, share and learn. And so we have essentially created some guiding principles, which suggests that we're making sure that the right people are in the room and they are focused on investment. That whatever is presented is informative, fact-based and regionally relevant. Of course, it's for you to decide whether it's informative, but fact-based and regionally relevant is certainly on my agenda at all times. And then finally, that we value the opportunity to learn equally with the opportunity to share. And so those three principles really summarise our kind of reason for being here at the QIB, and hopefully will give you a sense of what we're trying to achieve through the events as well. So today we're focusing on people-powered investment, and Roger's asked a timely question. He's actually asked whether he can find the attendee listing. It should be there. Roger, I'm surprised I can't see the word attendees either. There's three little dots. I wonder if it's hidden behind there. If not, I can certainly share that with you after the event. So indeed, the people here are what really matters, and that's the theme for the event today. So we have a theme for each event throughout the year, so angel investment, investment funds, and then people-powered investment, and finally a roundup of the year in December. And really this was a cheeky excuse to talk about inclusion and diversity and the importance of those things when it comes to building a fast growth startup business and funding it, in fact. So I have just been slightly put off by the live signal that's just appeared, but I'm going to bowl on in the hope that you haven't only just joined me and that you have heard my preamble so far today. So the different categories where we might find some people power, of course, in those kind of startup businesses would be amongst the advisor community, the advisory community, amongst the investors themselves, the founding team, and then cultural co-founders, by which I mean, and it's a phrase that comes from Reid Hoffman, who talks about the first 100 employees being those cultural co-founders that help to set both the diversity and the kind of inclusive nature of a culture within a business. And really my intention here is to put the spotlight on the fact that there isn't a significant flow of capital going into female-led businesses and more diverse businesses. And we'll hear more about the statistics relating to that a little later. But frankly, the more we can do to increase the diversity of the teams working amongst and with those companies, then hopefully the better that will be for the future. Fab. Thanks for the reassurance, Emma. That's super. Always so strange doing these virtual events, isn't it? So people-powered investment, let us power on. Our agenda today, pretty simple, so welcome and scene setting from me that's happening right now. Then we're going to get into some lightning talks. The first one from Rosie Bennett, who's going to be talking about the Sept Squared partnership and giving us a bit of an update. Then we are joined by Stuart Nicol, who's going to, who doesn't have an H in his name, in fact, but Stuart is nonetheless Stuart Nicol, and he is going to give us an update on a new fund that comes from the Southwest called QuantX and where that's come from. And then our third speaker, weirdly, is going to be me. So really pleased to be sharing an update on a project that I've been developing behind the scenes. Only a few people have seen it so far, and I'd love to get your eyes on it and find out what you think about the Reinvestment Club concept that I'm working on. And then we'll round up with some roundup of the Beauhurst data and insights into successes in terms of who's raising in the next quarter. The final section of the event, and this reflects our principles, is about learning being as powerful as sharing. And so I love to spend a bit of time doing some networking at the end of the event. Obviously works a bit better when you've got a cup of tea or a glass of wine. But hey, all we can do is power on with a bit of virtual networking. Please do stick around to spend a few minutes chatting to other people in the audience. So let's start with some good news. In the last quarter, certainly since the last event in June, we have seen 56 companies raise, in fact, nearly £105 million, which is pretty impressive in terms of equity investment. We'll hear a little bit more about who the top businesses are within that community on this next slide. So 56 companies in total. I think I've got the top 12 here, but Ultraleap coming out on top in terms of raises in the last quarter, followed swiftly by Cortext, Money Hub Enterprise, and then Callan Lens. I think Cortext and Callan Lens were both in the last month, in fact. So if you want to keep up with this kind of data, then do watch out for my investment updates that are published every month. Equally, if you'd rather come along to these events and just hear about the top 12, then feel free, because it's lovely to have you here. So Ticketo snuck in there as well, doing very well in their latest raise, which was a really significant seed round. Some impressive stuff going on. And one of my personal favourites, of course, Vet's Kitchen, who we don't hear enough about, probably not in the tech land, let's be honest, but they are providing a range of nutritional pet food. So some great examples of different companies across the broader Southwest as well, some based as far afield as Cornwall and Bournemouth. So definitely representing the full Southwest, which is great to see. So that brings us to our first lightning speaker, and I'm really pleased to welcome Rosie to the stage with me today, and to share her latest update on all things Sept Squared. So I'll let you introduce yourself, Rosie, and share your presentation. Over to you.
Thanks, Briony, and hello to everyone today. I'm not going to do a huge update on Sept because there's so much to say that I'm going to focus on the investment programme and some new announcements and things that we're doing. But the first thing I want to say is welcome to Cardiff, because Cardiff have just joined the Sept partnership officially. So fantastic to extend our people-powered network, actually. So being on the theme there, Briony, our capacity for people-powered investment is even bigger because we've got a wider partnership. And as ever, just the headline for Sept, as the partnership, we're always interested to meet companies that may want to join our business acceleration centres or indeed do collaborative R&D with our universities. So, you know, our expertise is in supporting young, exciting, growing companies to innovate. And that's primarily actually to source public and private funding to help them grow through innovation, through investment that backs innovation. And that brings me on nicely to our RARE programme, which I'm next slide, please. I'm thrilled to announce that we have been refunded. Oh, there we go. On this programme, which we've been running as a pilot for the last 18 months or so. We have deployed £1 million already, and this was money that we applied to Innovate UK to have. And the exciting thing about the programme is it turns the usual grant and then find investment piece around, which is always quite risky for companies that may secure the grant but struggle to get the investment piece in time to get the project started. So what this programme does is flip it over. So we work with angel investors and syndicates in our consortium, and many of you are here today, so fantastic. So we work on getting the investment secured in principle up front, but it's conditional on the grant coming in for the company. We then invite the company to apply for the grant. If all goes well and there's a green light, then the investment comes in at the same time as the grant, and the company is it's happy days and get on with doing the project. So it's been a fantastic pilot, and we have been awarded a further £2 million, which is part of a £6 million pot that was awarded across 3 programmes in the RARE partnership. So great news for all of us, and I'm going to talk a little bit about how the programme works and about how you can nominate companies into the programme as we go. Just a point here, though, on the diversity point here. One of the objectives of the programme is to increase not just the numbers of angels in our network, but also to increase diversity in investing. So we are looking to invite some key angel partners in to represent groups that we don't normally have a high number of diverse investors. Okay, so next slide, please. So for the pilot that we've had going has we've seen investments in 10 companies already, and this is the sweet spot: early stage, highly innovative, aligned in sector with the Innovate UK Grand Challenges. So as early TRL, technology readiness, as possible. These are the types of companies that do really well with these Innovate grants and that we're really used to supporting. And it's often the first money in, and that's really exciting. You know, Spaceforge and Anify and Occo Health, all fantastic companies from the region that you'll know well. We're really pleased to invest alongside the investors in our network to support those companies. So yeah, more like that. That's what we're looking for, more like that. Okay, next slide, please. So in terms of the portfolio so far, obviously BPEC have been superb partners with us so far, have come in for over half the co-investment in the first round. We've done 5 investments. The 5th investment is yet to be announced, and that was the first one through BPEC Seed. So really excited about that. And other investors in our consortium, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. Angels Invest Wales, S100, and Dorset Business Angels. And the total amount that has been funded through the grant is 820,000, and that's leveraged over 2 million of equity. And that's really important from Innovate UK's perspective, because their whole mission is to bring in as much private investment as they can. as we can alongside the grants, because it shows, a joint a partnership really to invest in the future in UK PLC, creating jobs and growth as we go. Okay, next slide, please. So the existing consortium was 9 angel syndicates, and we've extended this to a few more. So as you can see, some really exciting emerging angel syndicates which are joining us. So brilliant to see Sites Angel Syndicate, and obviously Context. We'll hear from Stuart after this. Mainstream Exeter Angels, so that's really great to see them come on board. And then Future Worlds is the new angel syndicate coming out of Southampton University from the Future Worlds Accelerator. And obviously some more ones that we're quite familiar with already, like Newable and BritBots. So really great to build this consortium. And I'm talking at the moment to some others: Cornerstone, Islamic Funding Club, 10 by 10, and some women-led investor groups as well. So really trying to create some depth and breadth in the investor consortium. And what's really exciting about this is, we're funded through the RARE scheme up until April 23. However, we've had the kind of indication that this is potentially a really long-term relationship with Innovate UK. So if we can really demonstrate ourselves as a solid investor partnership, we will be in the running to have future round of co-investment available through Innovate. So it's fantastic to think that could be the future. Next slide, please. Okay, so just on who can apply, and we are actively inviting companies to be put forward. So whether that's companies from your existing portfolios or ones that you're talking to at the moment about future investment. And the really great thing about RAE, it can be the tipping point between an investment that you like but may feel slightly too high risk. What this money can do is to bring in some incentive and to hopefully bring on, as if you're a lead investor, to bring in other angels to join you to support a company. And it's a tipping point. It's non-dilutable funding that can come in alongside your investment. So there's some nuances in the amounts that are available for the grant pot. It was 50-50 on the last on Rare 1, which was very easy. Now it's 70-30 on a sliding scale. So anyway, it's I won't go into the detail now, but it's a nice co-investment scheme, and we're happy to look at prospects. Next slide, please. Yeah, so the process, again, I won't go into too much detail about the process, just to say that there's a 3 to 4 month lead time. So ideally, we need to get companies in the pipe by January, February next year, because we need to deploy the funds by April 23. So if a company is looking to do a 12-month project, that has to be started by April. It's likely that from January, February, we'll start to restrict the funding so that it's only 6 months projects and then maybe 3-month projects. But we'll taper down the amounts that are going to be available. But at the moment, we've got about $1.5 million left, because we've got 500,000 lined up for the submission in a week's time. So 3 companies we're putting in on 29th September. Then it's a 6-week rolling call. So the next one is November the 10th. So please get in touch as soon as you can. Okay, next slide. Right, I'm just going to switch tact here. So that was the RARE programme. The other thing I wanted to tell you about was another really exciting programme called the Executives into Business. So this is and again, it's another pilot, and it's to address the issue that we have with some spin-out companies who are fantastic technology, fantastic invention that comes out of universities. Sometimes why they don't make it into the market is not because of funding, it's because of lack of commercial lead and a lack of robustness on the commercial side. So the Executives into Business programme is £300,000. It's been committed to support around 20 executives. And so we're looking now for people that might want to put themselves into our pool, our talent pool. And what we're looking for is people that have done spin-outs before. So CEOs, finance directors, CMOs, COOs. So, but really someone who's going to take the commercial lead and to work with a pre-spin out with one of the Sept universities and it's taking on the CEO role to take that company into the market. Again, I won't go into the details of the program. Just flip to the next slide. There's a kind of overview here, but there's a talent pool here that is called the Executives into Business Talent Pool, and it's managed by Newcastle, who we are partnering on the program with. And so as I say, if you're interested in doing this, and maybe if someone you know sounds like a good candidate for the pool, please get in touch with me, and we will talk you through that process. Brilliant. And I think next slide is just a summary of the programs, and we'll send this around after, so you can sign up. And a big shout out for our Set Squared Invest 21, which is on the 1st December, 9 o'clock. So please come along to that as well and support this year's cohort of companies that are raising.
Fabulous. Thank you, Rosie. Bang on time, and a great roundup as well. I'll make sure the Invest event goes out in the newsletter for everybody, so they can sign up there as well when I send that out next week. And the slides will be made available via SlideShare as well, so fear not, you can have all the detail that Rosie has skipped over there. You gave us a great summary, really helpful. I had a few questions. Kick off with the random one, but why Newcastle? What's going on with the Executive Business Programme? That's interesting, but I was like, they're not even in the right region. What's going on?
Yeah, so we're all about collaboration, as you know. So the Northern Powerhouse and Northern Accelerator are they're actually one of the 3 partners in the RAIA programme as well. We're increasingly working with other regional powerhouses, and they have pioneered this Executives into Business programme. They ran it for 2 years already. They've put 40 spin-outs through it. It's really effective, and so we thought, as part of our new scale-up programme, we would have a go at that. So yeah, that's why we're doing it. And they're still running the talent pool because it's a huge procurement nightmare, basically. So we thank them for that. Yeah,
I can only imagine. Fab. Sounds like a really good initiative, though, and certainly great to kind of identify and create a bit of a magnet for all those people who have those skills and help them find the best matches in terms of the opportunities that are out there. So that's really exciting. And speaking of other places and other universities, you mentioned the great news about Cardiff coming on board. And they kind of full partners. What is the people power that they're bringing to the partnership?
Yeah, well, they are joining Set Squared partnership, and so I don't know the details actually, but I'm thinking they will be getting their own accelerator soon. So yeah, definitely coming in as part of the research partnership. Yeah, so great. Yeah, really, really excited. Fantastic university.
And you quickly mentioned there the scale-up programme. Is that still alive?
Yeah, so the scale-up programme has been refunded for another 2 years. And so scale-up programme is all about collaborative R&D. So, you know, what we're trying to do is build really nice consortiums. So that may be a startup, an SME, a university, and maybe another SME that might be an end user a bit further up the value chain or supply chain for that company. And we're trying to build really nice big grant applications that can really make a difference. So we're running a number of campaigns. So the themes are, at the moment, we've got live themes in sustainable technologies leading up to COP26. We've got a health tech campaign. But really what we're looking for is companies that are scaling, but they're scaling through innovation. So it's slightly different from other scale-up programs like TechNation and other things. You know, it's all about scaling through innovation, doing collaborative R&D that can really make a step change in that company's trajectory.
Great. And unlocking some interesting, innovative partnerships in that as well. That sounds fab.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Super. I'm asking all the questions that are top of my mind, but I'm conscious that there's an audience out there. So if anyone's got any questions, please do ask them. I noticed Emma was inquiring as to whether there were any angels here who've got personal experiences of the RAIA programme, and certainly would be interesting to hear those. Feel free to add them into the chat if you've got thoughts, because you've benefited or had interesting experiences with the RAIA programme. Really exciting to see that additional funding coming through, and certainly, and to hear that more than 50% of it has been deployed alongside BTEC as well, which of course is Bristol focused, but that the network is growing actually in terms of all the different partners. There were a few in there that I hadn't heard of, not least what were they called? BritBots. What a great
Yeah, BritBots, fantastic. So they're specialising in robotics and bit more physical tech, but yeah, really exciting emerging angel syndicate. Oh, Briony's gone quiet. Shall I carry on talking, Briony? Yes, I think we've lost Briony. So, Briony, are you there? I can carry on talking about BritBox and other angel consortiums. Obviously, if you lead angels as well, I think that's the other thing I need to say is that if you are a lead angel and you're not actually attached to a syndicate at the moment, we still would love to hear from you, because actually this does go beyond that, and it means that we can work with, bring in new angels and introduce them to the syndicates. Right, I think Briony's gone. Are we still live? Can someone just give me an indication in the chat that everyone's still live? Because I've lost Briony.
Yeah, I can hear you, Rosie, and it's all coming through fine.
Okay, Stuart, should we carry on? Because I know you're on next, aren't you? I don't want to eat up all the time. So, Stuart, why don't you come on and I can interview you?
Great. Afternoon, everyone. Yeah, good. You're all still here apart from Briony, but at least with this distributed system, we can keep going, rather than the presenter suddenly falling ill and having to cancel. So rather than put a load of slides back to you all, I was just going to speak. I'm going to touch on Quantex in some detail, but also tell you some of the other things I'm working on. So if I could just have your attention specifically for the first few minutes, then you can let your minds wander a bit if Quantex isn't relevant for you. So Quantex will be a 10 to 15 million pounds SEIS hybrid funds investing in the Greater Southwest region. As I said, I'll come back to that. The other initiatives I'm involved in, for those of you who don't know me, I've been involved in venture capital for over 20 years. I've been living in South Devon for over 12 years, and I've been trying to put those together for quite some time. Some of that with Octopus, sometimes at Crowdcube, sometimes looking at other funds, and hopefully now that this is going to come to fruition with Quantex. Some of the other stuff I'm involved in is I'm also about to launch a small quantum technology fund, and I'm speaking to some of the entrepreneurs in Bristol about that. So that's going to be £5 million or so, global but UK biased, seed stage quantum tech. So please do get in touch with me if that's of interest. Our first deal on that one's a business called Arkit, which I know is going to do some work in Wales soon, and has got some people in Bristol. One of the other things I'm working on at the moment is a small study for the local enterprise partnership, the LEP, should have just said, and that's around a technopole. So how can we make sure that people in the regions aren't left out? How can we level up? How can we make, hopefully extend this virtual system further afield into the Southwest? So that's something I'm actively working on at the moment, and hopefully it will then help draw in Z-Square, TechSpark, etc., so that everybody can be informed more quickly and efficiently than is currently the case. Mentoring wise, I do a lot of work for the Royal Academy of Engineering, and I know this is about diversity and inclusion, and whilst we've got a lot of work still to do in the region, most of my mentoring there is with Kenya, Vietnam, India, etc. So as a bit of how lucky are we in this region, and in what we do already compared to those guys. Again, we can touch on that if you like. And then I guess finally, I'm a trustee for a charity which helps armed forces, veterans, spouses, serving people set up and grow their own businesses, called Heropreneurs. So if you've got anybody of that ilk that wants some free mentoring advice, then just point them to the website and they'll get through to us. But with that sort of listing, then I'll go back to Quantex. So prior to Quantex, I was running the Cornwall and Isles of Scilly investment fund. At that time, I met a group of entrepreneurs, industrialists, and financiers, and that's they were like many people over the years. They were thinking, well, how can we? We've got a wonderful region. People should want to work here. We should be able to retain people in the region. There's a lot of overlooked technology here which doesn't get the funding that it ought to, and/or gets dragged up to London. Again, as I say, not an original idea, but hopefully this is finally coming together. So you can have a look at the website. It says quantex.co.uk, but the sort of most active partners in that, my colleague Richard Haycock, who is formerly spent a lot of time in IT, sold the business to Apple, worked for Oracle, and now he's chief executive of the fund. The chairman of the investment committee, who's also active, is Dick Olver, or Sir Richard Olver. He was chairman of British Aerospace for 10 years, deputy CEO of BP for longer than that, but very, very keen to support high growth businesses in the region and to try and get the energy transition sort of done right, especially here as well. And then I've mentioned one more, Roger Killen, who some of you may know from Exeter University. He was the entrepreneur in residence in the health arena for a few years. Exited a couple of health tech businesses, Dr. Foster probably being the one most people would know best, and again now is actively involved in the fund. The fund is mostly invested in by ultra high net worth investors, most UK, some overseas, and we're hoping to get the support of people like Oxygen House as well, if you know them in Exeter. What we're going to be investing in: 3 tech areas: optimizing healthcare, enabling net zero, and monetizing data. The last of those being a bit of a catch-all, because if you're not doing that in this day and age, then frankly you're missing out. And as angels, we've already done 3 deals. So we've invested in a business called Neuronostics, which was Exeter based when we invested in it, now Bristol based, and it creates a math model of the brain to improve the treatment of epilepsy. A business called Siniska, which is looking at cellular senescence and how to prevent that. And a business called Role Mapper, which is looking at HR tech. How do we write the correct job roles in the first place so that we can optimize the number of candidates and the most appropriate candidates we get? Things like removing macho wording from it, which makes a big difference. Enabling flexible working where possible, and enabling remote working, which they obviously started doing this pre-COVID, but it's now become a lot more important. And in the deals we're trying to do, we really want to be confident that we can completely help those businesses as we take them on, because it reduces our risk, it reduces their risk. Frankly, we can negotiate a better deal because we're giving this big added advantage. So to take an example of something like Role Mapper, I think we've introduced them now to at least a dozen sort of FTSE 100 and multinational equivalent companies who are their ideal target market, and we've been able to do so at a very senior level, and we do that with confidence because they've got a great product and a great team. That's probably about enough of an overview. I hope all of that gives you guys enough questions to ask me.
Great, thank you, Stuart. Fab. Sorry to miss the beginning of your introduction. I'll have to watch the recording back, which will be available after the event. The joys of Wi-Fi and working from home, hey? That was really helpful, thank you. And great to hear those sectors clarified in terms of your kind of particular focus. In terms of geography, I might have missed it, but where are you kind of particularly looking? Are you selective?
Yeah, so at the moment we're saying we're biased towards the southwest. There's no legal requirement in our funds, etc., not to invest, elsewhere in the UK with the EIS or SEIS, or frankly anywhere else. But we really do want to make the southwest a more innovative tech place, for ourselves and future generations. So that's a big push from us. And how we define that, well, I think everybody's reluctant to define the greater southwest, and if it goes into Gloucestershire and Wiltshire and there are great businesses there, then good. But as I say, the first 3 businesses have been Devon based.
Great. Okay, that's good to know. Thank you. And in terms, you mentioned you've done those 3 deals as angel deals so far. It'd be interesting just to know a little bit more about the kind of size of round that you're participating in and the size of deal you expect to do once the fund launches and when that might be.
Yeah, sure. So it always seems to be in the next month the fund's going to launch, but it really, hopefully, we're down to finalising paperwork stage. We've got our FCA regulations and people have signed commitment letters, etc., etc. So I would say we should launch in the next month, and thereafter we'll be doing typically seeds, maybe Series A. I think if we invest in seed, we'll hope to support Series A and beyond as well. And the investment amounts will be sort of 250k to 750k, something like that.
Great. That distinct sweet spot, you might have spotted that on my Twitter account, the pinned tweet at the moment is the research I was doing a few months ago into that particular problem zone, which is, for companies raising between 500 and 800k, which seems to be a particular challenge.
Yeah.
So that's great to hear. Fab. Super. What else do I want to ask about? Any particular preference around size or level to which the business has progressed in terms of whether you look at pre-revenue deals or not?
Yeah, so both Neurognostics and Senisca are seriously pre-revenue. So we're obviously happy to look at that. We just want to make sure they've got as long a runway as possible, knowing it's going to take a lot longer. So grants help with that, and both those companies have been very successful over the period of creating good grant revenue for genuinely items of research that are pointing in the right direction for what we hope to do. And also just mentioning the RIA grant, we're looking at a couple of companies there which are hoping to take advantage of that. And I would say because those grants are quite significant, and because as part of co-investors of a larger round, then that probably makes it, if we do those deals, it certainly makes a difference in us looking at those deals seriously. Whereas previously we might have said, no, it's just too far away from revenue, and it's just too uncertain where that valuation hike will come from.
Yeah, sure, that makes sense. Great, yeah, great to see your logo on that slide in terms of the RIA program. That's great news. It won't surprise you that I'm going to ask a question related to the theme of the event around people-powered investment. So you mentioned some pretty impressive names there, but I couldn't help but notice they were all men. And so fine, they've been successful and they've set up a fund, and I'm excited about that because it means they're going to deploy some capital. But do you have any kind of mechanisms in place to make sure that you are supporting a diverse portfolio?
Yeah, so we have tried to bring in active female investors at the fund level, but for now we've got 2 advisory board members, Liz O'Driscoll, who hopefully a few of you will know, and I work with Liz at Exeter Velocities, and also Viv Cox, who's was head of renewables at BP, and sits on a number of non-exec positions of multinationals, and again both live in the region. In terms of deals we've done, so of those first 3 deals, there are female directors on all 3 of them, active directors. With Roll Mapper and Senisca, it's a predominantly female founder board. We didn't set out with that intention, but they're great teams are doing well. So we're pleased about that. And I think we're probably not going to be biased towards creating more diversity, but we'll certainly welcome it. And we're consciously aware and sort of neurodiverse and age-wise that being a white guy isn't always the best thing.
Absolutely. The growing evidence, not least the fabulous McKinsey report that everybody cites, right, in terms of the speed and success of businesses with mixed and female-founded teams. So yes, that sounds great to hear, and good to hear that that's evidenced already in your portfolio. I see that David has asked a question in the chat, which may be a hypothetical question or maybe a personally motivated question, but either way, I'd be interested in the answer. So he's asking whether or not a carbon hydrogen production technology would be in your sweet spot. He is suggesting that there is a carbon hydrogen production technology that is many times more energy efficient than alkaline or PEM electrolyzers. Does that sound like it might fit in one of your
Yeah, I mean, definitely that, you know, there's a need for a solution for hydrogen in the UK. There ought to be a good rationale for hydrogen in the southwest. We've looked at a few things, you know, extending the hydrogen truck logistics chain down into the southwest in the future. I think we just need to be confident, you know, we can go in there, we can help significantly, which if it's sort of building off the back of the kind of oil and gas industry into renewables. Again, you know, we've got the contacts to do that, and similarly with my time in Octopus, I initiated our solar and strategy there. So again, know those guys well. So certainly, you know, happy to look at it, and you know, hopefully give good feedback if it's not one for us. Lovely.
So one final question, where should people find you? I guess there's some contact details on your website, I imagine.
Yeah, there's an inquiry form on the website. We have had, you know, not just junk through that. People have been in touch with us. Richard and I monitor it, and we'll get back to you within about 48 hours. So please, you know, kind of trust that, or find me on LinkedIn and ping me an email. But I'll just probably send you the same email address.
Terrific. Yes, the perils of 21st century, where we can be contacted on so many devices. Makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense indeed. Well, with that, I will thank you ever so much, Stuart, and also Rosie. I didn't get a chance to thank her for your involvement this afternoon. And do stick around if you'd like to join the networking. Just wanted a red dot before I let you go in the Q&A, but it's the same question, so fear not. You're free. Thank you ever so much, and hope to see you soon. Great stuff. So, as I mentioned, in a slightly indulgent manner, I have taken the third speaker slot today because I've been working on a project which is really in the sweet spot of this theme in terms of people-powered investment and how we increase and create more diversity amongst our entrepreneurial ecosystem, as I like to call it, across the Southwest. And I've been kind of indulging this idea. It came about through a really interesting session, a roundtable session hosted by Charlie at NatWest and Louis, and essentially it's an idea I've been musing on for a while, and I thought, hang on, let's just formulate it into something a little more concrete and see what other people think too. So I've started that process. I've probably spoken to maybe 8 or 10 people who've taken a look through a few slides for me and given me some critique and some challenge, a lot of which has been very positive, which is lovely, and makes me think perhaps this idea really does have legs. Hence, I am here today asking you to lend me your brain for maybe 10 minutes whilst I just talk you through the concept. And I would love your input, whether that is questions, whether it is comments, whether it is critique and challenge, or offers of help. So you'll see at the end of my presentation that there's a few gaps in terms of the idea, and I'd love to get some support with it. So without further ado, let me introduce you to the Regional Reinvestment Club. So this was inspired by a couple of different things which I've encountered in my research into investment, and certainly thinking about building on the work I was doing as scale-up enabler at Engine Shed, and now as scale-up lead at Rocket Makers, really thinking about this barrier to access to investment and why we have a lack of diversity amongst the companies that are being funded, not founded. And so, so I came across a couple of things. One is something called the Founders Pledge, which is a global concept, came out of the States. And essentially allows and invites founders to pledge a certain percentage of their liquidation value at exit into planetary causes, essentially. So I've been taking a look at that. I felt like it seemed like a really terrific idea, and I've tried to signpost a few of our founders towards it. And I've also been looking at something called Archangels, which is based in the UK in the Southwest, and is actually a fund, but it's a philanthropic fund inviting wealthy individuals to pay a membership fee of £1,000 in order to support artistic endeavours amongst the artistic community in that particular area of the country. And essentially, as part of that £1,000, they get back a piece of art at some point in the 12 months, in addition to obviously that warm and fuzzy feeling of supporting an underfunded community to do more creative works locally. So 2 ideas that really prompted me to come up with this thing, which working title is called the Regional Reinvestment Club, enabling a more diverse and connected entrepreneurial community. So I was building on, or this idea came about partly because of some work done by Endeavour Insights, which I have a lot of time for. They're an organisation who essentially analyse entrepreneurial ecosystems across the world and identify the kind of gaps and barriers to success for those ecosystems. For me, the pillar that's particularly interesting and under-supported in the Southwest is this idea around reinvestment. So the concept that our successful entrepreneurs are able and supported to reinvest, not necessarily financially, but perhaps through inspiring the next generation or through mentorship or building out spin-off businesses. So lots of different activities that could fall under this reinvestment banner, but it's an area where, having spoken to a fair number of exited founders, where people often find themselves wondering, well, how do I tap into this world? How do I get involved? So to help them with that, I have come up with an idea which responds to 3 issues in particular. There's a bunch of others. So the first one being the percentage of equity investment that actually goes into female founded teams, mixed gender teams, and black founders. So there's a lot more data around this. I've just picked out 3 particular statistics, but it really is alarming in terms of the flow of capital going into the more diverse communities. There's also a growing ecosystem of funders who are supporting diverse founders after when they're raising 300 grand or more. So lots of venture capitalists who are recognising the lack of diversity in their kind of Series A rounds are starting to work a little bit earlier on and starting to support founders who come from more diverse communities. However, in order to get to that 300 grand raise or more, then obviously those founders are going to need a significant amount of social capital and a good understanding of the language of raising investment. And often those are things which are missing. The other thing we see is that perhaps they don't see the existing ecosystem of support within the Southwest as being for them. They're looking for something which is more tailored. And then the final challenge that we have locally that relates to this particular project is that we have a strong community of exited founders and of people working in people working in professional services who do have disposable income but aren't necessarily choosing to undertake angel investment. But I wonder, my proposition would be, or my hypothesis would be, that they could become meaningful investors and enablers in terms of the way that they could support our community of entrepreneurs. So that leads me to the idea, which is essentially a philanthropic fund, which is funded in 2 ways. So there's a membership fee, which individuals, wherever they come from, pay £1,000 a year, not a month, in order to be a member of the Reinvestment Club. And I'll talk more about what for and why in a moment. And then the second source of funding would be the reinvestment pledge, which is a pledge made similar to the founders pledge of a percentage of liquidation value into the fund, and that might come from founders who are supported by the fund, but also by those who have been who are exiting at the moment or have been successful in exit recently. So a fund. However, why? Who for? We would be creating a fund. Let me skip on to another slide and I'll come back to it, for diverse and impact-focused local founders. And the idea would be that those founders would receive essentially a grant, a donation, if you will, of between £10,000 and £25,000 in return for participating in some learning, essentially probably an e-learning module, which would help them to understand investment readiness better. So that £10,000 to £25,000 isn't just necessarily funding the immediate work, but is also setting the foundations for the next round of investment and starting to really tap them into the support ecosystem and infrastructure that exists. So those diverse and or impact-focused founders would receive that fund and hopefully go on then to continue to build their own funding over the next however many years, 7 to 10 years perhaps, and then we get to exit. There would also be other beneficiaries, of course, so founders and professionals who are participating in the fund as funders would also be able to meet a network of like-minded individuals and have an infrastructure through which they're able to engage with and support the entrepreneurial ecosystem. So that might be through mentoring or support. It might be through extending their own networks and sharing contacts. It might be through sharing their experiences and inspiring others. And then, of course, the later stage investors are also going to benefit because they will have a hopefully clearer and richer pipeline coming from our region. There is also an important part of this, so it isn't just a case of donating £1,000 a year, but rather becoming part of a club. And that club, that community, that team of people have a shared commitment to improve the diversity and inclusion within our entrepreneurial community in the Southwest. So founders could also contribute their insights and experiences, their own stories, in order to help them to help others on their growth journey. And we'd run dinners and activities and events in order to bring those people together. There's often people from London in particular who want to come to the Southwest and get to know more characters here. So why don't we curate that community in a more meaningful way? So essentially, the nuts and bolts of it are that we could create, it's an idea at this stage, a philanthropic fund to support diverse founders, which would really help them to unlock their understanding of how to raise more funds in the future and build their businesses. Obviously, there is a kind of bias here towards equity funding. However, I think part of the process would be to ensure that people's understanding is that equity funding has one set of outcomes and that actually impacts for the business, that there are other ways of funding those businesses too. So really being quite broad in our explanations and helping people to learn about all the different options that exist rather than just one pathway to success. So that covers who for, the benefits. In terms of success, the long-term goals, increased investment going into our diverse founders, increased diversity amongst the community, and increased awareness of and connection between founders and support organisations, whether they are growing new businesses or have successfully exited their businesses. Ultimately, that will hopefully lead to more visible success from companies which are actually created by diverse founders, and an increased fund size would be a nice to have too, given that we're inferring an ROI for those companies and for the region as we start to see all of that growth. I won't go through the nitty-gritty in any real detail. I think I've probably coming up for my final minute of my 12, but really the intention is here that this would be a not-for-profit initiative intentionally building a community rather than necessarily trying to build exit value necessarily. So there's a bit of I guess a controversial observation within that, but I think for the companies that need this support at this stage, we need to find a way which is about supporting them before they get into the cycle of investment. Other things to mention on there, I would love to have a separate board or group who would help select the beneficiaries. So I'm thinking there would be a kind of twice yearly, every 6 months, that we would make the funds available through particular rounds rather than a kind of rolling application. And that we'd start by having a soft launch to test the idea and try and establish and find 500 club members to commit so that we have enough capital to make, maybe 25 donations to specific businesses in the first couple of years. So an idea which sits slightly outside of our traditional equity investment funds, but perhaps could help to unlock a greater level of diversity amongst our community. I hope no one's been playing bingo with the word diversity as I have done that presentation, because I imagine I used it quite a few times. But I wonder if anyone has any questions. Obviously, because I've presented, I can't very well ask myself questions. But the final slide just invites you to suggest, really, whether or not there's anyone you know of that might be up for getting involved. So I didn't mention that 100% of the fee, of the membership fee, would go towards the companies, the beneficiaries, intentionally. And the idea would be that we'd find a separate organisation or individual or family office to fund the operational costs. So I'm on the lookout for founding partners who might help me with that. I need to find the first 500 club members. I don't think I'm quite ready to recruit them, but is that you? Is it someone you talk to over dinner and isn't actually involved in entrepreneurship at all, but could actually add a lot of value to our community? And then the content development. So I've started to identify a few bits and bobs in terms of organisations that might help us put that together and things we could build on that already exist. And of course, the kind of legal structure and setting up of the social enterprise. Oh, and a co-founder. So I am a woman, yes, that ticks one diversity box, but I have not been a founder and I have not been through this process, and I would love to find somebody who has bucked the trend and managed to secure that investment, ideally locally, and been successful. There's a few names already, as you would imagine, on my list. I'm sure some of them are on the tip of your tongues as well, but please do drop me a line if you know of anybody who you think might be up for a charitable philanthropic project like this, which really starts to unlock some activity amongst our community. I will pause there. I don't see a flood of questions or a flood of offers of support. Let me just check the Q&A tab on the off chance. There's some chat coming in live. Very good question. It wasn't me, I didn't post it. I'm guessing it was Abby. Is there a specific timeline or is it being shaped? So at the moment, really, I'm gathering feedback. So we're really in the kind of concept stage. I'd love to make a go, no-go decision by the end of the year. And I think in order to do that, I need to get a sense of whether or not we've got potential club members and whether or not I can find a co-founder. So if you can help me with that, that'd be ace. Fab, a few offers of support coming in. Yeah, good question, Stuart, about the public sector. So I think what is interesting about this is the public sector often ask for a market failure, right? And that I would suggest, there's quite a lot of evidence of a market failure here, but whether or not they will have the appetite to do something quite so philanthropic, I don't know. So I will certainly ask those questions and engage with the community there. At WECA for sure, and perhaps further afield too. There's a few others that spring to mind. Yes, Jeff, great question. Really glad to hear that you made it into the event. Hurrah. Yes, diversity we have not yet defined, but there are, I think it's 14, what are they called, Ben? Underrepresented characteristics. Something along those lines, which I need to learn more about in order to make that decision. But yes, the idea would be certainly supporting mixed teams in terms of gender, female-founded teams in terms of gender, and then all of the other underrepresented characteristics that are less obvious to many of us. Then Emma asked a question, have you seen this type of initiative work anywhere else in the world? Very good question. No, I haven't. I have had, one of the people I've gathered feedback from was Jenny Tooth at the UK Business Angels Association, who I consider to be one of the most well-connected and well-informed people I know around investment funds and other such activities. And she mentioned a few examples, so I will definitely take a look at some of those, but none that are on the top of my tongue right now. But yeah, there's a few, but nothing specifically like this. Thank you, Stuart. I will check out that link later. Ash, one question I have is about outreach. Often there's a query around initiatives like this only being found by those who would know where to look in the first place. Very good point. So wondering what the outreach marketing partner strategy for such thing might be to reach such people. This has been very much top of my mind because I think the danger is that we just end up in an echo chamber talking to one another about things we already know about. This event being no different today, actually. Lots of names that you will all recognise on the chat, which is lovely and super supportive, but I want to get out there and I want to be speaking to more people, and certainly about initiatives like this. So yes, I think there is a innovative approach that we can take to marketing it. So my intention would be to create a brand around this, which is which we can use across, whether it is bus stops or universities, or basically trying to think outside of the box in not going through the existing entrepreneurial ecosystem. Which will be difficult, but certainly suggestions like some of the groups, who was it? Richard was just saying about the Bristol Black History Group, and some of the other organised groups who aren't necessarily entrepreneurially focused, but thinking about how we could go through them too. I think for me, even if this project doesn't fly, the more we can do to really engage with some of those communities, then that would be a really important thing. Yeah, Jeff, I can totally understand that. And I would add that into the slides if I had thought about it for longer than I did. So yeah, I'll definitely add that in before I send the slides out. And on that note, that brings me to the end of our event here, just 1 minute over time, with a reminder that our final event of the year will be on Thursday, the 6th of December, with a roundup of 2021. I've already secured Silicon Valley Bank. They're going to be coming and giving us a bit of a lowdown on their observations from the last 12 months. But if there's other people you'd like to hear from that we've heard from before, or new to this community, then do let me know. I'd love to get your ideas too. And then that just leaves, I think, that should be my final slide. Yes, so just leaves it for me to say thank you ever so much for joining and being part of the QIB virtually. I'm hopeful that the final event of the year will be in person and will involve perhaps a drink and a sandwich of some sort provided by us and the Investment Activator Programme sponsors who are there on screen as a final reminder. So thank you ever so much for joining us. If you've got any questions at all, let me know. And if not, then do move over to our networking where you can meet other people who have joined in today into this event. It would be lovely for you to make some connections as well as I have. Hope you have a fab afternoon and speak to you soon. Get in touch if I can help with anything.